Welcome to Anime Audiobook. Naruto, Wood Fruit. Chapter 1, Ishikawa Kiyoshi. MC Appearance, Younger Image. Older Image. Dash. Land of Fire, Konoha Village. At dawn, in the forest outskirts, towering trees with lush, green leaves swayed gently with the breeze. A boy, about 8 years old, with a noble and determined face, sat alone, cross-legged, with his eyes closed in quiet meditation. His aura was calm and soothing, lacking the usual mischief of children his age, as if he were one with nature. Occasionally, a bird or two would fly over, chirping, unafraid to perch on him, and dry leaves fell around him, softly landing on his shoulders. 1, 2, 3 leaves. He counted softly. Sunlight filtered through the canopy above, casting patterns across his figure. Yet he remained still, eyes closed, listening to the forest's song. 33 leaves, exactly. The boy opened his eyes slowly, brushing off the scattered leaves from his shoulders. Had someone been watching from the start, they'd have noticed a curious detail. Precisely 33 leaves had fallen around him since he'd settled under this tree. Gazing at the sparrow that had jumped from a branch onto his hand, Kiyoshi smiled. The sparrow chirped twice, as if in response, then flapped its wings and flew off into the distance. He got up gracefully, feeling a deep sense of peace within. It had been 8 years since he woke to find himself in this world. His father, Ishikawa Masato, had been a medical jonin at the Konoha hospital, while his mother, Ishikawa Akane, was a medical chunin. 8 years ago, on the fateful night of the Nine Tails attack, they'd both sacrificed their lives to protect him, leaving him with his elderly grandmother. However, his parents had left behind a decent inheritance, and the village had also provided a substantial compensation which gave him a comfortable life. His father's old friends also lent a helping hand, so he and his grandmother lived comfortably. But the true wonder for Kiyoshi lay elsewhere. He possessed an innate amount of chakra far beyond the norm, accompanied by an extraordinary sensory ability. When he was 5, during an aimless wander in the forest, he stumbled upon a mysterious green fruit marked with strange patterns, a fruit identical to the legendary devil fruit he'd read about from One Piece. After hesitating for some time, he decided to take a gamble and eat it. The taste was, to say the least, unforgettable. But more importantly, he gained the powers of the wood fruit, a rare Logia-type devil fruit that was eaten Admiral Ryokugyu in One Piece. Armed with foreknowledge of the potential dangers within Konoha, Kiyoshi was careful not to reveal his newfound powers casually. Although still in the academy, he had inherited his father's excellent chakra control, allowing him to excel both academically and in ninjutsu. Even the talented Niji Hyuga from the Hyuga clan's branch family found it hard to keep up with him. In taijutsu, the top of his class was Niji, a born prodigy from a prestigious family, with his Byakugan granting him a near 360-degree field of view and unparalleled insight. Next to him ranked Rock Lee, a boy born without any ninjutsu or genjutsu talent, who tirelessly trained his body to become an indomitable force. Yet no one truly knew the extent of Kiyoshi's abilities. His chakra control had already surpassed his father's, and he had mastered every medical jutsu in his father's scrolls, including the advanced A-rank healing jutsu. Even more astonishingly, the wood fruit power fused with his chakra, producing miraculous effects. He could become one with the nature, conjuring and manipulating plant life at will. Unlike traditional wood release, he required no hand seals or gestures. A mere thought could summon a vast array of plants under his command. His abilities not only allowed him to drain chakra from others, similar to a carnivorous plant, but he could also absorb their flesh and nutrients, transforming it into energy to heal himself. Though his skills were advanced enough to graduate early, Kyoshi felt no rush to leave the academy. At least the hard work paid off. He murmured to himself. Years of practice, merging with nature, I can now sense the omnipresent natural energy in the world around me. Every day, he dedicated time to meditate, quieting his mind, sensing his surroundings, and enhancing his spiritual and sensory skills. But his deeper goal went beyond personal strength. He sought to master Sage Mode. Just sensing natural energy isn't enough. If someone attempts to absorb it recklessly, they might turn into stone. But I am different, he whispered, eyes glinting with a faint crimson that only he could perceive. As a wood fruit user, I am part of the forest, a piece of nature itself. With my chakra control, balancing the three forces of spiritual energy, physical energy, and natural energy to produce sage chakra is within reach. And if anything goes wrong, I can halt the process instantly. As he spoke, he glanced down, the crimson light in his eyes deepening in determination. Maybe, it's time to begin. Chapter 2, Mutation. At this moment, Kyoshi's eyes underwent a change. Both eyes gleamed a blood-red hue. Each eye had 3 spinning black tomo. The Sharingan. If anyone had seen this scene, they would have been struck speechless with shock. Because Kyoshi wasn't a member of the Uchiha clan, yet he possessed the Sharingan. Moreover, it was the rare 3 tomo form, a stage even most pure-blood Uchihas rarely reach. And unlike Kakashi, who gained his Sharingan through a transplant from his friend Obito, Kyoshi could control his Sharingan freely, turning it on and off at will, just like an Uchiha, 3 tomo. I wonder if it can evolve into a Mangekyo Sharingan, Kyoshi murmured, lightly brushing his eyes as he mused. This was the terrifying result of the mutated powers granted by the wood fruit. 2 years ago, at dusk, he had been fishing by the Naka River to practice medical ninjutsu. There, he accidentally stumbled upon the corpse of Uchiha Shisui. Though his eyes were gone, his body still held a vast amount of chakra. Sensing that no one was around to monitor him, Kyoshi promptly absorbed the lingering chakra from Shisui's body. During the process, however, he inadvertently consumed a small part of Shisui's blood and flesh, which merged into his body like a nourishing force. That night, he awoke to find his eyes burning hot, and his vision had sharpened immensely, allowing him to see every detail with clarity. When he looked in the mirror, he saw that he had somehow awakened the Sharingan. And it wasn't just any stage, it was the 3 tomo form. It was then that Kyoshi realized the terrifying ability of his fruit. Through consuming the flesh and chakra of those with a Kekii Genkai, he could absorb their powers and fully integrate them into his own. Because of Shisui's immense chakra, he had directly gained the 3 tomo Sharingan. But the Uchiha clan? He muttered. Deactivating his Sharingan, Kyoshi gazed in the direction of the Uchiha clan's compound with mixed feelings. As a reincarnator, he knew all too well what fate awaited the Uchiha clan. Since the Nine-Tails attack on the village 8 years ago, Konoha's higher UPS had grown increasingly suspicious of the Uchiha, pressing down on them with hostility. Consequently, the Uchiha's resentment toward the village leaders had intensified over time. 2 years ago, the more radical faction within the clan had reached a breaking point, plotting a coup to seize power. The death of Shisui, however, had taken them by surprise. As a young prodigy known for his mastery of the body flicker jutsu, Shisui had been one of the clan's strongest assets in their planned rebellion. His sudden loss forced the Uchiha to delay their uprising by 2 years. Today, the tension between the Uchiha and the Konoha leadership had grown irreparably, and it was clear that the clan's destruction was imminent. Well, everyone has their own destiny. Kiyoshi sighed. Luckily, school's about to go on break, so I don't have to attend classes. That gives me time to experiment and see if I can control Sage Chakra. Watching the sun rise steadily into the sky, Kiyoshi stretched his limbs, unconcerned. After all, he wasn't part of the Uchiha clan and had nothing to worry about. The Uchihas, with their arrogant and stubborn ways, clinging to the glory of their clan, didn't exactly make them popular. With a light leap, he grabbed a few books he had left on a tree branch and started toward the Ninja Academy. Alongside the textbooks provided by the academy, he carried 3 other books he had borrowed from the library. They were titled Introduction to Puppet Techniques, Basic Techniques for Puppet Masters, and Puppet Design and Creation. Puppet techniques, as rumor had it, were founded by Tsunagakuer. Throughout the 3 great ninja wars, Tsunagakuer's ingenious puppet techniques and their hidden weaponry had inflicted massive casualties on Konoha. Because of this, Konoha had conducted extensive research into Tsunagakuer's puppet techniques. However, due to a lack of comparable skill, Konoha's puppets fell short in precision and flexibility, vastly inferior to those made by Tsunagakuer, which had pioneered the art. As a result, using half-baked puppets against Tsunagakuer puppeteers in battle wasn't effective. Over time, puppet techniques never truly developed within Konoha. Kiyoshi, however, had a bit of interest in puppet techniques and planned to study them as a side project. Of course, it wasn't as if he aimed to become a master puppeteer. After all, as a wood fruit user, fully dedicating himself to puppet mastery would be missing the point. Currently, he didn't want to reveal his wood release too early, lest he attract the attention or jealousy of certain people. From his father, he had inherited some scrolls containing various jutsu. Among the advanced techniques were the Shadow Clone Jutsu and the Body Flicker Jutsu. There were also a few low-level fire release jutsu, but no particularly powerful jutsu. Out of personal interest, he planned to delve into puppet techniques, mainly as a means to enhance his chakra control skills. Chapter 3 – Rivalry Sparks. Currently, the previously quiet village began to buzz with activity. On the streets, people bustled about, moving back and forth. Various sized stalls lined both sides of the road, echoing with the sounds of vendors calling out. Time is the most unforgiving force, and 8 years had passed since that fateful night of the Nine Tails attack. Some villagers had finally started to recover from the nightmare of that event. Just then, they spotted a certain child with yellow hair and 6 whisker-like marks on his face. The kid rushed out, darting around mischievously, even hopping over some vendors' stalls like a gust of wind. "Hey you! Naruto, it's you again! Stop right there! That brat, stop running around! Haha, catch me if you can!" Kiyoshi happened to witness this scene. Passing by, he smiled faintly. With a quick push from his feet, he sprang up, bounding across the rooftops of buildings. Moving at a decent speed, he headed toward the Ninja Academy. He naturally recognized the boy's identity. The so-called Child of Prophecy, also the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, the reincarnation of Asura, second son of the Sage of Six Paths, and one of the future legends of the shinobi world. Uzumaki Naruto. But he had no intention of greeting him. After all, Naruto's identity was too sensitive. Just as Kiyoshi arrived at the academy's gate, a grey figure sped over, moving like a whirlwind on his hands in a handstand. "Yo, morning, Kiyoshi." The sweaty figure jumped up with a grin. Ignoring the disdainful glances from others nearby, he enthusiastically greeted Kiyoshi. He wore a grey training outfit, with a bowl haircut and thick eyebrows. He looked rather amusing. "Lee." Kyoshi nodded with a smile. Among the students at the Ninja Academy, Rock Lee was the one he respected the most, without a doubt. His relentless dedication was beyond the reach of ordinary people. It was hard to fathom just what kind of unusual body allowed him to train so relentlessly. Anyone else training like that would have broken down long ago. Woo, woo. What a wonderful day. I ran 10 laps around Konoha already. Wiping off his sweat, Lee gave Kyoshi a thumbs up, his teeth shining brightly. Because he lacked the talent to control chakra for ninjutsu, he couldn't learn any ninjutsu or genjutsu. In the academy, he naturally faced discrimination and ridicule, often isolated by classmates. But Kyoshi was the exception. Not only did he never laugh at Lee, but he even encouraged him again and again. This made Lee more determined than ever to believe that even without ninjutsu, he could still become a real ninja through hard work and taijutsu alone. He was one of Lee's few good friends in the academy. Although Kyoshi often trained with him, building physical strength and practicing taijutsu, and had even treated Lee's injuries from training multiple times. Unfortunately, Kyoshi didn't share Lee's morning enthusiasm for greeting the day by running around Konoha. This disappointed Lee a little. 10 laps. Hearing this, Kyoshi couldn't help but twitch his mouth slightly. Konoha wasn't small, even a single lap took considerable time. Not to mention, after hearing Kyoshi's casual suggestion, Lee began adding handstand laps around the village, using only his hands in place of his feet. Who knows what time this guy woke up? He kept up this intensity day after day, and now he was even running so many laps. And Lee was only 9. His unwavering willpower was truly impressive. Humph, without talent, no matter how hard you work, it's useless. A cold snort came from nearby. A figure dressed in traditional attire approached the academy entrance. With long black hair, a grey band tied around his forehead, and a calm expression. What stood out were his pure white eyes. Niji, morning. Kyoshi greeted him with a smile. Though Niji looked well-groomed, his energy seemed slightly lacking. The bandaged hands, wrapped much like Lee's, seemed a bit stiff. He, too, must have undergone intense training. Niji, next time we spar, I'll definitely defeat you, Lee declared with burning eyes as he faced Niji. I'll prove that even a talentless person like me can surpass a genius through hard work. I'll be waiting. Niji's tone remained steady, but his gaze shifted to Kyoshi, filled with a competitive spirit. I'm looking forward to the day you finally go all out against me, Kyoshi. He always felt that whenever they sparred, though Kyoshi seemed to put in full effort, he still held back. This realization had pushed Niji to train even harder than usual. I always give it my best. Feigning innocence, Kyoshi looked at Niji seriously. What can I say? The Hyuga clan's gentle fist isn't like ordinary taijutsu. Facing you in close combat is quite restricting, I can't afford to be careless. Besides, I'm a medical ninja, remember I just need to stay behind and let my teammates protect me. Fighting isn't really my place. After all, he couldn't exactly say, if I went all out. You wouldn't even be able to block a single attack, right? If he said that, Niji, with his pride, would probably explode on the spot. Humph. This was the answer he gave every time. By now, Niji was used to it. He shrugged and walked straight toward the classroom. He had to admit, Kyoshi's chakra control skills surpassed even his own as a member of the Hyuga clan, famed for their chakra precision. It made sense that he would excel at medical ninjutsu. In fact, Kyoshi had long aspired to follow in his late father's footsteps. His father, a former medical ninja in the upper ranks, had died years ago protecting him. Niji had no argument against Kyoshi's choice to pursue the path of a medical ninja. I'll be waiting for that day to come, Kyoshi. Chapter 4, Youthful Rivalry. Kyoshi. Wow, he's so handsome. Kyoshi, do you have time after school? Let's train together. Kyoshi, this is a special gift I prepared just for you. This is a bento I made myself. Please, you have to try it. Kyoshi-san, I have one too. Hey, you. Move aside. Yeah, you're blocking the way. At the entrance of the Ninja Academy, in less than half a minute, Kyoshi's presence was noticed. Not only his classmates, but even girls from other classes, both lower and upper grades, gathered around him. One by one, they approached him eagerly, their eyes sparkling as if they'd just found something irresistible. In small groups, they surrounded him, faces flushed with excitement, hearts in their eyes. In just a moment, poor Lee was pushed aside, ending up bruised and battered. Not far away, Niji turned back. Looking at the swarm of girls, he couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. That guy is really popular, hey. Although Niji wasn't interested in those girls, he couldn't help but feel a little envious of Kyoshi's popularity. As expected from my eternal rival, Kyoshi. Lee got up awkwardly, rubbing his bruises. Looking at Kyoshi, who was surrounded by a crowd of girls, he felt a surge of admiration rather than jealousy, something he'd long since grown used to. Clenching his fists, his spirit burned brightly. But youth never gives up. I've decided. I'll run an extra 10 laps around the village after school. Niji, want to join me? Idiot. Niji walked away, expressionless, heading toward the classroom. Not interested. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your kindness. But there's no need for bentos or gifts. Kyoshi finally managed to escape the crowd of girls. Turning down their overly direct confessions, he quickly slipped back into the classroom. Kyoshi, over here, over here. Wiping away cold sweat as he stepped in, Kyoshi hadn't even greeted Lee, who was already seated. A girl with her hair tied in double buns, sitting on the right side of the third row, waved to him energetically, completely ignoring Lee beside her. Good morning, Tenten. Seeing his desk mate, Tenten, Kyoshi gave a light smile. Patting Lee's shoulder, he picked up his books and took his seat in the middle of the right side of the third row. Kyoshi, this is a bento I prepared for you today. Please, you have to try it. With a sweet smile, Tenten placed a beautifully prepared bento in front of Kyoshi. Her large eyes sparkled with anticipation. Her face blushed faintly, but as a girl raised in her family's weapon shop, she was cheerful and straightforward, showing no sign of shyness. Thank you. Taking the bento, Kyoshi smiled warmly. He noticed the envious expressions from some of the boys around, but he didn't mind much. Unlike other girls, he held a soft spot for Tenten. So, he rarely turned down her kindness. Hee. Tenten rested her chin in her hands, sitting there quietly, ignoring the murderous glares from the other girls in the classroom, her smile radiant. Watching Kyoshi's face, she found him increasingly attractive, her gaze lingering on his peaceful demeanor. A sweet smile naturally appeared on her lovely face. These puppet books. Then, her eyes caught sight of the books Kyoshi had placed on his desk. For a moment, she was at a loss. This wasn't the first time she'd seen these. Kyoshi had been reading books related to puppetry for some time now. Curiously, she asked, Kyoshi, Didn't you say you wanted to be a medical ninja? Do you actually want to become a puppeteer? What makes you say that? Seeing Tenten's curious expression, Kyoshi replied earnestly, as a competent medical ninja, learning some puppet jutsus for self-defense seems quite necessary and reasonable, don't you think? With his precise chakra control, being a medical ninja came naturally to him. Mastering basic puppet jutsus wouldn't be challenging for him. With his imagination shaped by the information and different ideas of the 21st century, plus the knowledge he'd accumulated over the years by borrowing books from the library, and his innate talent, he was confident. Even if he didn't plan to invest all his energy in puppetry, he believed he could still make significant strides. He might not be able to surpass the S-class rogue ninja from the Sand Village, the genius puppeteer who assassinated the third Kazekage and sparked the third ninja war, Sasori, in a short time. But he was confident he wouldn't be too far behind. Tenten. She couldn't argue with such a solid reason. Is there even a medical ninja like that? There is your idol, Lady Tsunade, one of the legendary Sunin, who's not only skilled in medical ninjutsu but also incredibly powerful in combat. Fine, as long as you're happy. She shrugged. Around noon. The day passed quickly. When the teacher dismissed them, announcing a break in the afternoon and a 2-day holiday, the class of eager young ninjas cheered, excitedly heading home or teaming up for plans. Bidding farewell to the reluctant Tenten and ignoring the other girls' attempts to chat, Kyoshi didn't join Lee for training as usual. Instead, he declined Lee's invitation and went straight home. Compared to the prominent clans like Uchiha, Hyuga, and the Inoshikacho families, Kyoshi's home wasn't very big. But it was far from small compared to an orphan like Naruto. It was a 3-room apartment on the 2nd floor that the village had provided to him and his grandmother after reconstruction. He and his grandmother shared the home, which was cozy enough. To his surprise, his neighbor was a highly skilled chunin named Kurane Yui. She often looked out for Kyoshi, as a gentle big sister figure. She had also lost her family during the Nine Tails attack years ago, much like Kyoshi. She frequently visited his home, joining them for meals, though joining usually meant she brought groceries and cooked for them. Over time, Kyoshi grew close to Kurane, and the two developed a sibling-like bond. I'm home. P.S. In the original Chunin exams, it was mentioned that Kurane had only recently been promoted to Jonin. Since this is set 5 years before that, with the Uchiha clan still around, Kurane is likely not yet a Jonin. Chapter 5, Wood Clone. Cough, cough, Kyoshi, you're back. In the living room. An elderly woman, stooped and with a head full of white hair, walked over, leaning on a cane, and coughed repeatedly. Good boy, you must have been starving, come, eat. Cough, cough. This was made by Kurane. It's all your favorite food. Cough, cough. That poor child had to go on a mission and still came back just to take care of me. Grandma, take it easy. Kyoshi stepped forward to support the old woman, smiling as he asked, did Sister Kurane leave the village? After years of living together, even though he was living a second life with memories of the past, he had long since regarded this grandmother, who cared for him so deeply, as his own. His grandmother's name was Ishikawa Azumi, and her persistent cough was a remnant of a sickness from her youth. It was said that she had once been a chunin, but during a top-secret mission, she not only lost a leg but had to give up her ninja career and received a prosthetic limb. Moreover, her lungs had been severely infected by toxins during a battle with an enemy. Though she was treated post-war by the legendary medical ninja, Tsunade, the timing of her treatment was not optimal. Consequently, toxins had seeped into her organs, leaving behind lingering effects. Living to this day was already a miracle. Thanks to her late son, Kyoji's father, Ishikawa Masato, a skilled medical jonin, who had tirelessly treated and cared for her. However, with Masato's passing, and as Azumi grew older, her health continued to decline, and her cough worsened. By the time Kyoji began to learn his father's medical knowledge and mastered those healing jutsus, it was already too late. His grandmother's condition had worsened to a critical state. With his current medical skills, he could not effectively cure her ailments. He could only provide daily treatments to alleviate her suffering, hoping to extend her life a bit longer. For the past 3 years, every time he checked on his grandmother, he infused her body with his powerful life force chakra, a result of obtaining the wood devil fruit. But even this only managed to sustain her life, allowing her to avoid lying in a sickbed. Otherwise, she would have likely passed away long ago. Cough, cough. This is a note she left for you. Azumi sat down. She smiled, pointing to a note attached to the table. Kyoji picked up the note. In neat handwriting, it read: I have a mission and will be out of the village for 3 days. You need to take care of yourself and grandma. Remember to water the flowers on the balcony when you have time. His heart warmed. Kurane really regarded him as her younger brother. In such a simple note, there was a wealth of warmth. Just looking at the delicious dishes on the table made it clear that they were made by Kurane herself. Soon, the two of them finished the hearty lunch, chatting in the living room. It wasn't until the old woman showed signs of fatigue that Kyoji helped his frail grandmother to rest. Using this opportunity to check on Azumi again, he infused her with the vibrant chakra, nourishing her with life. Once she had settled into a peaceful sleep, he returned to his room. It's about time to begin. Kyoji's expression grew serious. He began forming seals with one hand. From his body, a tree full of green leaves and vibrant flowers sprouted visibly, pulsating with life. Next, that tree transformed into a human figure, falling away from him, forming a clone that looked exactly like him. This was a jutsu he had developed after thoroughly mastering the shadow clone jutsu. He spent considerable time researching and analyzing its principles, combining them with the abilities of the wood fruit to create a tangible clone jutsu. Unlike shadow clones that required evenly distributing chakra, he could freely control the proportion of chakra assigned to each clone. Similar to the wood clones created by the first Hokage, his version, improved by combining the shadow clone jutsu with his bloodline limits, was significantly more powerful and could utilize all the ninjutsu and even the abilities of his main body. Moreover, unless faced with lethal damage or chakra depletion, his wood clones wouldn't easily dissipate. Like the shadow clones, when he dispelled a wood clone, all the memories and experiences would return to the main body. Unless the main body actively dispelled the jutsu. You sit there and begin to absorb natural energy. Kyoji took a deep breath and said to his wood clone, combine it with the spiritual and physical energy of your chakra, forming a ratio of 1/3 each. Understood. The wood clone nodded. It sat cross-legged, closing its eyes to sense the natural energy around it. Like the main body, it possessed the abilities of the wood fruit. Equating itself with nature, it soon entered meditation in a deep state of focus. The omnipresent natural energy floated in the air, seemingly endless and inexhaustible. Spiritual energy, physical energy, natural energy, each at 1/3. If controlled properly, there should be hope of controlling true senjutsu chakra. Kyoji had prepared for this day for a long time. The wood clone, utilizing the finely tuned chakra control inherited from the main body, didn't blindly absorb natural energy. Instead, it cautiously absorbed small amounts of natural energy, bit by bit. It's worth mentioning that his wood clone could not generate chakra from nothing, or rather, all tangible clone jutsus worked the same way, unless the main body could continue supplying chakra to the clone, or the clone could draw chakra from others, it would dissipate once the chakra it received was exhausted. However, the wood clone contained chakra that Kyoshi had produced from his own spiritual and physical energy, evenly distributed from the start. He only needed to adjust the ratio of his chakra and the absorbed natural energy. Theoretically, it meant that the spiritual energy, physical energy, and natural energy would each take 1/3. Otherwise, how could a certain overpowered Jinchuriki use their shadow clones to get Senjutsu Chakra Chapter 6, Senjutsu Mastery? Boom! In just a moment, without any surprises, a vast surge of energy erupted from Kyoshi's wooden clone. The quality was light years apart from the chakra he had produced in the past. Without a doubt, this was Senjutsu Chakra. Whoosh, whoosh. The room wasn't particularly spacious. It was a dedicated training room used by Kyoshi. Green sprouts appeared out of thin air, growing from the ground at a visible speed. In the blink of an eye, the entire room was engulfed in numerous vines and green trees, with flowers blooming all around. What was astonishing was that the wooden clone's hair began to grow wildly. It transformed into a brilliant green, shining with a radiant glow. Moreover, 2 green shadows appeared around his eyes. He seemed to have completely merged with nature, exuding an incredible vitality. The Senjutsu chakra within him was remarkably stable. There was no hint of the anticipated turbulence. It felt astonishingly docile, as if it had been a part of him from birth. He could control it at will, without any stiffness or difficulty. It is a success. Kyoshi smiled. As expected, just as he had initially predicted. As a user of a nature-type fruit specifically, the wood fruit he was different from others. He didn't merely possess the wood release, he was an embodiment of the forest itself, a manifestation of nature, equivalent to the source of life. How could natural energy possibly reject itself soon? His wooden clone continuously absorbed the natural energy floating in the atmosphere, transforming it into a massive amount of Senjutsu chakra. Until the chakra within him, not particularly abundant, fully integrated with the natural energy, transforming into Senjutsu chakra, unable to absorb any more. In a precautionary measure, Kyoshi had only allocated 1/10 of his chakra for this. Finally, as the wooden clone automatically dispelled, bang! Smoke filled the air. In an instant, changes subtly occurred on Kyoshi's body. He seemed to merge seamlessly with nature. Whoosh! His black hair transformed into a brilliant green, vibrant with life. It grew at a visible rate, cascading down his back. Soft and flowing, it moved as if there were no wind. His eyes, too, glimmered with a faint radiance. In the room, now transformed into a flower garden, blossoms continuously grew and bloomed. It was almost unbelievable. At that moment, the incredible sensation of being able to command the forces of nature, the essence of all things, immersed Kyoshi. It's so powerful. Is this sage mode? He murmured. In that moment, he felt as if he were an omnipotent god. The entire Konoha village, even the broader world, could not escape his innate, overwhelming perception that became even more exaggerated in sage mode. Countless chakra signatures and any subtle life fluctuations could not escape his notice. He comprehended them all clearly. Ahem! Outside the door, a fierce coughing sound. Kyoshi couldn't help but feel a bit helpless. After hiding for so long, could he really not keep it secret any longer? Whoosh! With a mere thought, he naturally exited sage mode. His green hair, now cascading to his shoulders, began to visibly shorten, returning to its original state. The green shadows around his eyes vanished as well. He opened the door, squinting slightly. Outside, the corridor was overrun with flowers and green leaves. Standing in the hall, his grandmother Azumi looked shocked. He wasn't sure what to say. "Grandma, you would release, I never expected to see its manifestation again before I'm laid to rest." Ahem. Azumi gazed incredulously at the flowers and plants covering the ground, then stared blankly at her grandson. Her wrinkled face was filled with excitement and complexity. Her lips trembled as she coughed, saying, "I should have realized it sooner." "Ahem, Kiyoshi, you've awakened Lord Hashirama's wood release. Ahem, you were born with an enormous chakra pool, and your sensory abilities surpass your father. You also mastered the healing jutsu perfectly before you turned 8. Using her cane for support, Azumi leaned on Kiyoshi. Looking at this somewhat unfamiliar yet incredibly exciting grandson, she couldn't help but feel an overwhelming nostalgia. That powerful life-giving chakra has been sustaining this old body of mine. Although her strength was not formidable, she was not an ordinary person. At her peak, she had been an elite chunin. Every time her grandson checked and treated her, how could she not sense the slightest anomaly in these past 3 years? If it weren't for his daily infusion of chakra nurturing her almost depleted body, she feared she would have long passed away. "Grandma, aren't you curious at all?" Kiyoshi was utterly astonished. He looked at his grandmother, Azumi, in confusion. Although she seemed shocked and excited at discovering he had most likely awakened wood release, she appeared to accept it rather quickly, lacking the profound curiosity he had imagined. If it were someone else, they would probably be filled with disbelief and confusion. "Right, ahem, you don't need to be surprised." Azumi coughed as she watched the puzzled Kiyoshi. She smiled gently and said softly, "Your aunt and I were both members of the Senju clan. We just followed the clan's arrangements and married civilian ninjas in the village." "What?" Kiyoshi's eyes widened in shock. Chapter 7, Family Legacy. "What?" Kiyoshi was stunned. He had a faint memory of his aunt whom he'd met a few times in the past. Sadly, she passed away several years ago. He also had a 5-year-old cousin, Mogi Kazamatsuri, who hadn't yet enrolled in the ninja academy. If everything went as expected, she would soon be a classmate of Hiruzen's grandson, Konohamaru, when she joined the academy. What intrigued Kiyoshi more than anything was that, if he remembered correctly, this cousin would eventually become a Jonin instructor in Konoha and, somehow, possess the wood release. Though not especially powerful, it was an extraordinary ability. Kiyoshi had always found it odd. He'd quietly wondered if Mogi, like Yamato, had undergone some kind of genetic experiment, possibly merging with cells from the first Hokage, Hashirama, to obtain wood release. With that thought, he nodded in understanding. "So that's how it is." It seemed likely that Mogi's future wood release might have been awakened through her own lineage rather than being the result of an experiment involving Hashirama's cells. But since she wasn't a reincarnation of Ajura's chakra and lacked the power of yang release, her wood release was limited in strength. It wouldn't be nearly as powerful as that of Hashirama, the first Hokage. He was different, however. With the powers of the wood fruit, Kiyoshi had become a true embodiment of nature. Being the source of life itself, he had acquired an astounding yang release power by extension. Thus, the wood release he controlled, while currently constrained by his chakra levels, was not any weaker than Hashirama's. In fact, it might even surpass it. Not only could he absorb chakra and nutrients from others to replenish himself, but he could also perfectly integrate other bloodlines, thus acquiring additional Kekkei Genkai. Having inherited the Senju bloodline and using the devouring power of the wood fruit to merge perfectly with the Uchiha bloodline, Kyoshi now stood effortlessly at the peak that many shinobi would never reach in their lifetimes. With his exceptional innate talent and sharp insight, it was clear that, with some effort, his future accomplishments would rival or even surpass those of Tobirama Senju, the second Hokage. Even without being the reincarnation of Indra or Asura, given enough time, he might one day reach or even exceed the level of the legendary god of shinobi, the first Hokage. Cough, cough. Not only that, but Kyoshi, you were born with an extraordinary amount of chakra, far beyond others your age, as well as an exceptional chakra sensory ability, Azumi said between fits of coughing. The elderly woman's pale face flushed with excitement and joy as she continued. This kind of talent and power, even in the peak days of the Senju clan, was rare, possessed only by a few. Among them were the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, and the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. But what amazes me even more, she continued, is that you've awakened the wood release, just like Lord Hashirama. However, Azumi was unaware of the full extent of Kyoshi's abilities. Not only had he achieved wood release, but he had also recently mastered Sage Mode entirely on his own. If she knew, she'd likely be speechless with awe. Time passed by slowly. Before he knew it, it was evening. Azumi, unable to contain her tears of joy upon confirming that her grandson had indeed awakened the wood release, spent the entire afternoon excitedly chatting with him. Eventually, fatigue caught up to her, and after dinner, she drifted into a deep sleep. Meanwhile, the flowers and plants that had appeared in the room due to the activation of Sage Mode had somehow all been removed, ensuring that no secrets would be revealed. The puppet design is complete, it's time to put it into practice. Late into the night, Kyoshi, who had no intention of leaving his room, gathered several pieces of wood, along with paint, brushes, carving tools, and other materials, and got to work in the dim light of his room. In front of him lay a complex drawing filled with intricate notes and sketches. This was the puppet he had designed after studying puppet mechanics and memorizing all the essential points by heart. Though to be precise, it was more of a puppet toy. The puppet he designed was no larger than the palm of his hand when assembled. As a trained medical ninja accustomed to wielding scalpels from a young age, Kyoshi was naturally skilled with blades. Swish, swish. His fingers moved swiftly and expertly. The blocks of wood, sculpted with his refined carving skills, soon transformed into detailed, unique parts of various shapes and sizes. One by one, they began to come together. Before long, he had assembled 2 puppet dolls, each with a distinct appearance. He even painted them with great care. The one on the left had a bun hairstyle, a cheerful smile, and a cute face. It was a chibi version of Tenten. The other one had a ponytail, a butterfly hairpin, and a charming figure, giving off a sweet, youthful vibe. However, despite their cute exteriors, the intricate joints and components inside these puppets were meticulously designed. If they were made with higher quality materials at a larger scale, they would undoubtedly be excellent combat puppets. Especially if they were equipped with hidden weapons or sharp blades. They'd be perfect killing machines. Swish! Kyoshi stretched out his hands. From the fingertips of each hand, he extended a thin chakra thread. In an instant, he connected to both puppet dolls. Following the puppet manipulation jutsu he had memorized from his studies and combining them with his precise chakra control, he began practicing manipulation. Clack, clack. In an instant, the two puppet dolls seemed to come to life. Under his control, they moved with remarkable realism, starting with arm swings and leg kicks, from walking to running, from leaping to rolling. They moved effortlessly, responding fluidly to his commands. Finally, the two puppet dolls began to dance in sync, gracefully leaping and twirling. This, actually isn't that difficult. Chapter 8, Puppet Gifts. Do you think Tenten will like this gift? Looking at the chibi-style figurine of Tenten, Kyoji let out a soft chuckle. He had always felt a certain fondness toward her. She had shown him constant concern, quietly watching over him. He wasn't oblivious to her innocent, budding feelings. This gift was a small token of appreciation. And then there's that girl, Ino. Indeed, besides the Tenten figurine, he'd also crafted a second puppet. This one was modeled after the well-known member of the Ino Shikacho trio, the Yamanaka clan's successor Yamanaka Ino. Kyoji's late father had been a renowned medical jonin. Known for his straightforward and friendly nature, he'd formed many bonds over the years, particularly with the Ino Shikacho trio. Over the years, the three clans had frequently come by to visit Kyoji's mother, who had health issues and limited mobility. As a young child with no one to guide him, Kyoji would often run into difficulties in his training. The trio never hesitated to help, offering their teachings with patience. As a result, Kyoji gradually grew close to them, even viewing Shikaku Nara and the others as family. Naturally, he also became acquainted with Shikamaru, Ino, and Koji, all heirs to their respective clans. Unlike the heirs of other noble clans, Shikamaru, Ino, and Koji didn't carry any arrogance. They were close in age to Kyoshi, so they all got along fairly well. Ino even became a bit of a fan of Kyoshi. They were like childhood friends. Over the past 2 years, thanks to him, Ino and Tenten had grown to be close friends. The three of them often trained together, with Shikamaru, Koji, and Lee occasionally joining in. Thus, determined to master the art of being a player, Kyoji had thoughtfully prepared gifts for both girls. "Grandma, I'm heading out now. Remember what I told you. Be careful." I know. Early the next morning, after sharing breakfast with his grandmother, Kyoji chatted with her for a while. Using his wood release, imbued with life-giving energy, he revitalized her body once more. After packing the two puppets into a gift box he had prepared, he headed for the door, heeding his grandmother's gentle advice. "Right, almost forgot." He paused, lightly tapping his head. "I need to water Kurane-nichan's flowers." With a click, he took out the spare key Kurane had given him, locked his own door, and walked into her apartment. It was a cozy 3-room setup with a small balcony. The place was neat and organized, filled with a pleasant fragrance. Kyoji wasn't surprised. Kurane was always a meticulous person. The living room had a couple of sofas, and a slightly worn photo sat on the nearby table. It showed a stern man with red eyes standing next to a delicate girl with ruby-like eyes, her features as perfect as a porcelain doll. This was Kurane's father, Yui Shinku, a Konoha jonin who had also perished during the Nine Tails attack. This photo, a memory of her late father, was one of Kurane's most treasured possessions. Kurane was really adorable as a child. Kyoji picked up the photo, smiling at the girl in the picture. "No matter how many times I look, she's still so likable." He gently wiped the photo. No wonder Asuma, the third Hokage's son, had once tried to pursue her. Unfortunately, his feelings were unreciprocated. Over the years, Kyoji had managed to piece together Kurane's preferences. She didn't mind if her future partner wasn't particularly handsome, but he had to be stronger than her and relatively close in age. She didn't mind a man who enjoyed the occasional drink, as she, too, sometimes indulged, as long as he didn't overdo it. However, she had no tolerance for heavy smokers, finding the smell unpleasant and unclean. Thus, Asuma was effectively out of the picture. "Ah, Asuma, you should just continue protecting the village," Kyoji muttered with a slight smirk. "As for my beautiful and gentle Kurenai-chan, I'll be the one to look after her in the future." After spending so much time with her, he could hardly remain unaffected by the presence of such a kind, intelligent, and stunning woman. Occasionally, she even showed him gentle gestures of closeness. Chapter 9, Chakra Threads. After watering the flowers for Kurenai, the sun was already high in the sky. Outside, the streets bustled with people, lively as ever. Kyoji had spent a good amount of time crafting 2 intricate puppet dolls, a project that demanded meticulous attention. Now, with the gift boxes in hand, he dashed across the rooftops of one house after another, quickly making his way into a lush, scenic forest. There, waiting for him, were 2 distinct yet equally beautiful and adorable girls who had long been eagerly awaiting his arrival. "Kyoshi, you're so slow. Kyoshi, you're late." Seeing Kyoshi arrive, the 2 girls, who had been waiting for a while, lit up with excitement and came forward to greet him. "Sorry for being late today." Kyoshi apologized with a warm smile, looking at the 2 girls. Kyoshi. Ino, her hair tied up in a neat ponytail, dashed up to him and playfully wrapped her arms around his, pouting a bit as she said, "This is the first time you've been late." But her gaze soon fixed on the gift boxes in Kyoshi's hands, curiosity lighting up her eyes. "What's that?" Tenten, standing nearby with a gentle smile, glanced at Ino clinging to Kyoshi, her expression showing a hint of envy. Outgoing yet a bit reserved, Tenten wouldn't have made such a bold move herself, but she, too, looked curiously at the gift boxes. There were 2 boxes. "Could it be? These are gifts for both of you," Kyoshi said with a smile. "Gifts? Really?" Hearing this, both girls' eyes sparkled with delight. "This one's for you, Ino." Kyoshi handed the gifts over without keeping them in suspense. "And this one's for you, Tenten." "Hehe, thank you, Kyoshi." Ino looked at the delicate box in her hands, excitement all over her face. She smiled at Kyoshi with joy in her eyes. "I can't wait to see what kind of gift it is." "Thank you, Kyoshi." Tenten took the box, filled with anticipation. She hadn't expected Kyoshi to surprise her so early in the day. Although it wasn't just prepared for her, she was still thrilled. "Kyoshi, can I open it?" Ino asked, barely able to contain her excitement. "Of course." Kyoshi nodded with a gentle smile. With Kyoshi's permission, both girls couldn't wait and eagerly opened their respective boxes. Inside, each found a finely carved, beautifully painted puppet doll. The doll's expressions and features were so lifelike, capturing every detail. Who else could they resemble but themselves? Tenten's cheerful spirit, Ino's playful charm, all were intricately represented, as if they were miniature living versions of the 2 girls. "Wow! This is amazing! Is this a puppet doll?" The girls widened their eyes in surprise. Looking at their respective puppet dolls, they were thrilled beyond measure. "These dolls are so beautiful!" Ino beamed, clearly delighted, clutching the puppet that bore a striking resemblance to herself. She couldn't help but look up at Kyoshi. "Kyoshi, did you make this yourself?" "Incredible! It really does look just like me." Beside her, Tenten was equally happy as she examined her own puppet doll. Seeing the cute chibi version of herself, she was overjoyed, her eyes gleaming with curiosity as she looked at Kiyoshi. "These aren't just any ordinary dolls," Kiyoshi said with a smile. He raised his hands, and with a subtle motion of his fingertips, strings of chakras shot out, linking to the puppets the girls held in their hands. Under the girls' stunned gazes, he moved his fingers, making the puppet dolls dance gracefully and sway. Click, click. The miniature chibi versions of Ino and Tenten began to twirl and move, seemingly dancing. Especially under the magical control of Kiyoshi's chakra threads, the puppets could move their eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and even their necks, arms, legs, knees, and fingers, bringing them to life with astonishing realism. They looked like two adorable, miniature living beings, leaving Ino and Tenten in wide-eyed amazement. They could hardly believe what they were seeing. Gulp. "Kiyoshi, you mastered puppet jutsu this quickly." Tenten, overwhelmed with surprise, couldn't help but swallow as she looked at Kiyoshi, deeply shocked. She had known he was talented, but this was just too fast. If she remembered correctly, Kiyoshi had only started studying puppet jutsu less than half a month ago. This was beyond anything she had seen. "You're really amazing, Kiyoshi." Ino's eyes sparkled with admiration as she gazed at Kiyoshi. To think that, without any teacher's guidance, he'd taught himself with only a few puppetry books. In just under half a month, he'd not only become adept at puppet jutsu but also designed and created such intricately structured puppet dolls on his own. It was simply unbelievable. Chapter 10, Ino's Hesitation. The basics of puppet jutsu aren't actually that difficult. With a slight movement of his fingers, Kiyoshi guided chakra threads, making the puppet dolls appear almost as if they had their own consciousness. In a quick jump, each one returned to Ino and Tenten's hands, even playfully waving at their respective owners. Retracting the chakra threads, Kiyoshi smiled at the astonished expressions on both girls' faces. "Besides, I think practicing puppet jutsus is a great way to improve chakra control. That's why I want you two to give it a try." He paused, noticing that Ino looked hesitant, as if she had something on her mind. Gently patting her head, he chuckled, "Of course, I'm not suggesting you become a puppet master, Ino. There's no need for you to spend too much time or energy on it. Just practice whenever you can, bit by bit. Over time, your chakra control should improve, and that will be helpful for mastering your clan's secret jutsu." Although they could only meet up during breaks, under his guidance, both Ino and Tenten had made notable progress. Even Tenten, through 2 years of persistent effort, had managed to complete the basic chakra control exercises of tree climbing and water walking. Their control had improved enough to place them among the top at the Ninja Academy. "Oh, so that's it." Ino sighed in relief, realizing she'd misunderstood Kiyoshi's intentions. She'd thought he wanted her to pursue puppet mastery seriously. Even if she were willing, her father would never agree. As the heir to the Yamanaka clan, she couldn't abandon her family's unique jutsu to train in puppetry. "When you're more comfortable, I'll also teach you some basic medical ninjutsu. That'll take your chakra control to the next level," Kiyoshi added with a grin. "At that point, the Yamanaka clan's jutsus should be much easier for you, and you'll also gain some useful medical skills." Considering the prestige of the Ino Shikacho formation, not just in Konoha but across the entire ninja world, it was nearly certain that Ino, Shikamaru, and Koji would form the next generation of the legendary trio after graduating. And since their missions would likely involve some danger, a bit of medical knowledge could prove invaluable. "Got it, Kiyoshi. I'll work hard." Ino nodded with newfound determination. Kiyoshi smiled, pleased, then turned to Tenten. Although her family was well off, she was technically a civilian ninja without any notable lineage or clan jutsu. Tenten, you're different from Ino. If you're genuinely interested in puppet jutsu, I think you could even consider becoming a real puppet master. He thought for a moment and then added, don't worry about puppets, I can develop more powerful ones suited for combat if that's what you want. But, of course, only if you're interested. Unlike Ino, Tenten lacked significant talent in ninjutsu, and while she was decent with weapons, it was a field with many limitations. Even mastering the use of shuriken and kunao wouldn't allow her to match the natural advantage of the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. Puppet jutsu, however, offered an array of weaponry, with an endless variety of hidden mechanisms that could easily catch opponents off guard. Given her family's resources, she wouldn't have to worry about funding, either. Hey, you mean you want me to study puppet jutsu? Tenten was momentarily taken aback. She hadn't expected Kyoshi to suggest she become a puppet master. Tilting her head, she pressed her small fist to her chin, deep in thought. Recalling Kyoshi's perfect display just now, how fluidly he controlled the puppets as if they were part of him, her eyes lit up. A puppet master. That actually sounds pretty cool. I want to learn. With no hesitation left, she raised her hand and nodded enthusiastically. She'd never been interested in puppetry before, but that was mainly because Konoha didn't have any puppet schools or renowned puppet masters to teach her. If left to study on her own, she'd have no chance of learning it, or at best, only its basics. But with Kyoshi, a genius who mastered puppet jutsus in such a short time and could manipulate them so skillfully, teaching her, things would be different. She wouldn't even have to worry about finding suitable puppets in the future. More importantly, she'd have more opportunities to spend time with Kyoshi. Thinking of this, Tenten couldn't help but get a little carried away, slipping into her own dreamlike world as a glint of happiness shone in her eyes. Tenten. Tenten. Kyoshi had to call her name several times before snapping her out of her daze. As she returned to reality, her cheeks turning pink as she realized how close Kyoshi's face was. Hastily looking down, she stammered, "Sorry, I got distracted." Himino, noticing something amiss, eyed her suspiciously. "Tenten, were you just daydreaming about something inappropriate?" "Of course not." Tenten blushed, denying it immediately. She quickly changed the subject, looking up at Kyoshi. "So, I'm counting on you, Kyoshi. I'll do my best to become an excellent puppet master." Clenching her fists, her delicate face lit up with seriousness and resolve. Tenten knew that her family had some money, but in this world dominated by ninjas, she couldn't rely on just that. Without any clan jutsus, all she could do was work even harder. Otherwise, the gap between her and Ino would only grow. "I'm sure you'll manage," Kyoshi encouraged her with a smile. "After all, you're determined to become a great kunoichi like Lady Tsunade." Whether she would reach such heights was another matter, but her ambition and effort were praiseworthy. "Let's work hard together, Tenten," Ino added with a warm smile. Due to spending time with Kyoshi, the two of them had long since become close friends over the past 2 years. Kyoshi doesn't actually intend to become a puppet master, so don't worry, he just wants an excuse to teach Tenten puppetry out of personal interest. After all, he has the power of the wood fruit, which will be his main combat style. Chapter 11, Serious Training. No, that's not right. Make sure to control the chakra threads as precisely as possible. Then, combine it with the hand seals to manipulate them. On a lush, green patch of land, large trees stood rooted, swaying gently in the wind as leaves danced around them. A couple of puppet dolls, barely moved by visible chakra threads, were slowly coming to life. Kiyoshi, I've got it! In front of Kiyoshi, Ino and Tenten were being taught diligently, their faces flushed. From time to time, they would steal glances at Kiyoshi's face, making it hard for them to look away. They found it impossible to concentrate, and the chakra threads they barely managed to gather kept almost breaking. One by one, the puppet dolls collapsed before them. Ino, didn't you say you remembered? Kiyoshi was visibly exasperated. He couldn't help but tap the foreheads of the two girls, and you too, Tenten. What are you thinking? Focus. Ouch. That's mean. Ino and Tenten pouted with tear-filled eyes. They glared at Kiyoshi, feeling aggrieved. Especially Ino, who covered her forehead. As the little princess of the Yamanaka clan, her spirited nature made her clench her fists. Unable to hold back, she jumped up and threw herself at Kiyoshi. Before Kiyoshi, who was rolling his eyes, could pull her down, she had already wrapped her arms around his neck. With a fierce peck on his face, which was youthful yet exceptionally handsome, she exclaimed. It's all your fault for being so handsome. It makes it impossible for me to focus. Smack! 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 As if that wasn't enough, she continued to plant several more kisses. She then proudly raised her head, satisfied as if she had returned triumphant from battle. But facing Kiyoshi's speechless gaze, along with Tenten's wide-eyed stare, her cute face was unknowingly turning red all the way to her ears. This was the first time she had done something so rebellious. Even though she was usually lively and cheerful, she couldn't help but feel a bit shy. Turning her head away, unable to meet Kiyoshi and Tenten's gazes, she murmured, "Who told you to be so handsome? Be serious, we are training." Wiping the drool off his face, Kiyoshi, who had ambitions to become a tentacle master Ono, the king of the forest, got up. Having grown up together with the two girls, he certainly didn't reject Ino's affectionate gesture, nor could he scold her. "All right then, you two can practice on your own." Seeing Ino and Tenten, who couldn't focus, Kiyoshi felt a bit helpless. "Make sure to grasp the points we just went over." With that, he spread his hands and stepped aside. Sometimes being too handsome could indeed be a sin. He wondered if it was due to the wood fruit devil fruit combined with his own chakra, resulting in some unknown mutation. As he grew older, his facial features became increasingly good. Moreover, an inherent, natural charm radiated from him, which seemed to have quite a captivating effect on women. That was also why he was so popular at the Ninja Academy. "Yeah, I'll do my best, Kiyoshi." Ino suppressed her shyness and nodded earnestly. Seeing that the Kiyoshi she had admired and looked up to since childhood didn't seem to mind her actions, her heart filled with indescribable joy and excitement. "Me too." Although Tenten wasn't as bold as Ino, she wasn't about to be outdone and raised her small hand seriously. "Okay, if you have any questions, come to me again." After Kiyoshi finished speaking, he let Ino and Tenten practice on their own. He wandered over to a big tree and, relying on his strong sensing ability, confirmed that no one was watching. He casually picked up a leaf, and with a slight thought, whoosh! The leaf instantly split in two. The cut was perfectly straight. Zzz. Picking up another fallen leaf, he placed it in the palm of his hand. Thin strands of electricity flickered across it. The leaf quickly turned charred and blackened. Crackle, crackle. In the next moment, it began to smoke. It ignited spontaneously, without any fire. Zzz. Then, as the flames died down, the charred leaf was soaked once again. Without any external force touching it, it directly shattered into countless pieces. If someone had seen this, they would likely be too shocked to speak. That guy, Lee, is really putting in the effort. In the distance, a figure could be seen hopping along the edges of Konoha village, drenched in sweat. Kyoshi couldn't help but feel a strange sense of admiration. His expression grew serious. Then, I can't fall behind. 1, 2. Not continuing to practice the changes in chakra nature, as this level of practice no longer held much meaning for him. Kyoshi wasn't in a hurry to do more in-depth training on nature transformation. Instead, he began to warm up, preparing to train his taijutsu. He was very aware of how strong future enemies would be. Always extremely disciplined, he never relaxed when it came to taijutsu. He had never skimped on the energy he invested in this area. However, he also trained day and night, regardless of the weather. After all, no matter how powerful one's chakra or how incredible one's jutsus were, without a strong physique to support them and a tenacious will to control and wield it, it would ultimately just be a castle in the air. Of course, the difference between geniuses and ordinary people was significant. While he admired Lee's tenacity, Kyoshi had to admit that sometimes talent truly mattered. With a natural chakra reserve far exceeding that of ordinary people and outstanding sensing abilities, he already possessed the qualifications and potential to rival the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. Especially after acquiring the abilities of the Woodwood fruit, he had perfectly activated the latent bloodline power from both Senju and Uchiha clan within him. One could say his potential was limitless. Even if he didn't train as hard as Lee did, his exceptional talent made up for it. His physical strength and rate of progress were simply on another level compared to Lee, who was only chasing after him with determination. If he didn't hide his strength and didn't wish to stand out so much, he could easily defeat Niji, who was always first in taijutsu classes among the elite class, just using his physical skills. Let alone Lee, who ranked second. With a single punch, he could easily incapacitate or even eliminate his opponent. After all, he had already mastered the same monstrous strength as the first Hokage. Chapter 12, Hokage's Attention. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, half a month has already passed. Noon. The blazing sun shone high in the sky. On the rooftop of the Ninja Academy, which was currently unoccupied. After school, Tenten excitedly dragged Kyoshi here. Her 10 fingers stretched out. A series of chakra threads shot out from her fingertips, connecting to the puppet doll placed in front of her. Ka. As she skillfully manipulated it with her fingers, the puppet doll moved its legs, swung its arms, walked, jumped, and ran. Although the puppet's movements appeared somewhat stiff and lacked the natural fluidity of a real person, unable to move as gracefully as Kyoshi, it was already quite impressive. How is it, Kyoshi? Tenten said excitedly. Looking at Kyoshi in front of her, she asked happily, "Am I doing well?" "Very well, you've made great progress." Kyoshi smiled and nodded. Over the past few days, under his guidance, the two girls had been diligently practicing, and their efforts were beginning to pay off. One couldn't deny that Tenten indeed had a talent for puppet manipulation. Her progress could be described as rapid. She could easily control the puppet doll with chakra threads, maneuvering it at will. However, this was mainly because the puppet doll was relatively small and lightweight. If it were a large puppet proportional to a real person, controlling it would not be so easy. Meanwhile, in the Hokage building, in the highest office, an old man with white hair and beard, marked with age spots, and a pipe in his mouth, looked surprised as he gazed at the crystal ball before him, which was about the size of a fist. Displayed on the crystal ball was the scene on the rooftop of the Ninja Academy. It has just been half a month, and she can already manipulate the puppet dolls so skillfully. Watching the images in the crystal ball, Hiruzen couldn't help but praise, it seems this girl indeed has some talent to be a puppeteer. However, what truly caught his attention was not Tenten. It was the orphan of the late medical ninja Ishikawa Masato Ishikawa Kiyoshi. Although I have long noticed that Kiyoshi inherited his father's talent for medical ninjutsu, and his chakra volume is astonishing with chakra control far beyond his peers, he has even mastered some basic medical ninjutsu. Gazing at the young boy in the crystal ball, even Hiruzen, the self-proclaimed mature and steady Hokage who has seen countless talented people, couldn't help but feel a twinge of amazement. Yet I never expected that this child could master puppet jutsu so quickly by merely studying a few basic puppet books on his own, and he could even design and create such exquisite puppet dolls. A few days ago, while surveying Konoha as usual with his telescope technique, he happened to discover Kiyoshi teaching Ino and Tenten puppet jutsu. Moreover, he was able to manipulate two puppet dolls at the same time. It was quite unbelievable. For a child who had outshone even the genius Niji from the branch family at the Ninja Academy, he had certainly drawn the Hokage's attention. Hiruzen had not overlooked him. He had seen Kiyoshi diligently reading related books on puppetry multiple times. But he had not expected that the 8-year-old Kiyoshi could actually achieve something remarkable. Though it was just two inconspicuous puppet toys. The third Hokage's insight was, of course, not something ordinary. From a glimpse, one could see a glimpse of Kiyoshi's talent. Moreover, he was able to control the puppets with such precision and fluidity that they seemed almost alive. Such astonishing chakra control was something even he, as Hokage, might not be able to achieve. This child's talent surpassed that of his father. Looking at the young boy in the crystal ball, Hiruzen took a deep puff from his pipe and exhaled a cloud of smoke. He couldn't help but reveal a pleased smile, filled with a hint of anticipation. Perhaps, in the near future, Konoha will indeed see the emergence of a master puppeteer proficient in medical ninjutsu. At that moment, on the rooftop of the Ninja Academy, as the third Hokage shifted his gaze away from the rooftop with his telescope technique, Kiyoshi couldn't help but smile slightly, revealing a barely noticeable grin. How could he not sense the presence of that old man, who often spied on him, monitoring the village every few days? Moreover, it was impossible to hide the fact that he was teaching Ino and Tenten about puppet jutsu. So, he never intended to conceal it from the start. He wasn't from the Uchiha clan. He was simply a civilian ninja with a clean background. Even if he displayed some extraordinary talent, it wouldn't make the higher UPS too wary. At most, they would just pay a bit more attention. There was no need for him to be overly cautious and second-guess everything. You called me over, it shouldn't just be for this, right? Kiyoshi smiled at Tenten, saying, Lee said he wanted to challenge Niji, and I have to go treat him. Lee is challenging Niji again. Tenten was taken aback for a moment. Then, she spoke somewhat helplessly, he really doesn't learn his lesson. She had long grown accustomed to similar challenges. However, Lee always ended up with a bruised face. By the way, here's something for you. Tenten took out a storage scroll from her ninja tool pouch and handed it to Kiyoshi. This is the materials list you provided last time. I had my family prepare everything. Tenten said happily. After she made up her mind to become a puppeteer, Kiyoshi had directly given her a list of some materials to have her family gather. He said it would be used to create a proper combat puppet for training. Tenten had been looking forward to this for a long time. especially after witnessing her achievements in training over the past few days. Even her initially skeptical parents fully supported her in becoming a puppeteer. Because becoming a puppeteer typically didn't require direct combat with others. In fact, if it weren't for their precious daughter crying and demanding to attend Ninja Academy, Tenten's parents would have preferred that she not become a ninja at all. After all, as one of the prominent wealthy families in the Land of Fire, they often hired Konoha ninjas to protect their merchant caravans. Tenten's parents understood very well just how dangerous the profession of a ninja could be. Oh, so soon? Kiyoshi raised an eyebrow. But he wasn't very surprised. After all, he knew Tenten was a rich girl who didn't lack money. Moreover, her family ran a weapon shop, so they were never short on resources in that regard. Well, wait for my good news. He smiled and nodded, accepting the storage scroll. He had already prepared the puppet design and was just waiting for the materials to arrive. Waving at Tenten, Kiyoshi lightly leaped off the rooftop, jumping onto a nearby tree, and headed toward the training ground. I'm off. Lee and Niji are still waiting. Chapter 13, Proud Genius. Bang! Bang! In the wide training ground, a heavily bruised Lee let out a pained scream. He was struck hard and sent flying, landing in a battered heap. Across from him stood a young man with a proud stance, wearing a training outfit and bearing pale, piercing eyes. It's useless, Lee. Looking down at the defeated Lee before him, Niji spoke coldly, no matter how many times you try, you'll never be my match. The gap between an ordinary person and a genius can't be bridged with just a few passionate slogans. Damn it! I won't give up, Niji. Though bruised and bloodied, Lee clenched his fists, filled with determination rather than despair. With a face full of resolve, he stared up at the arrogant Niji and shouted, "Someday, I'll prove that hard work can overcome talent." Niji, you went too hard on him. Kiyoshi, who had predicted the outcome, walked over with a hint of exasperation. Seeing Lee's battered state, he sighed, after all, Lee is still our friend. Niji remained indifferent, snorting, he brought it upon himself. Anyone would get annoyed being constantly challenged, and the proud Niji was no exception. He wasn't here to be someone's training tool. If they wanted to challenge him, they had better be prepared to suffer for it. As far as he was concerned, he'd already gone easy on Lee, only giving him a taste of what defeat felt like. If he'd been serious and used the full extent of his gentle fist jutsu, the injuries would have been more than just superficial. Lee, you're being reckless. Kiyoshi didn't think Niji had overstepped. Raising his right hand to his chest, he calmly formed a one-handed seal. A gentle green light glowed from his palm as he placed it on Lee, healing the external wounds from his battle with Niji and the inevitable scrapes of his usual training. Watching Lee lying there in exhaustion but otherwise unharmed, Kiyoshi cautioned him once again. Training has to be balanced. Pushing your body to the limit all the time will only lead to setbacks, maybe even lasting injuries. One-handed seals. Niji's eyes widened in shock at the sight. Coming from a prestigious clan, Niji understood the implications of one-handed seals better than Lee. Some powerful jonin, after countless hours of practice, could simplify hand seals for basic jutsus, but only few could perform seals with only one hand. And what Kiyoshi was using wasn't just any jutsu. Healing jutsu was an A-rank medical ninjutsu, far more challenging than the basic jutsus. Kiyoshi, have you really reached this level? Niji couldn't hide his astonishment. For Kiyoshi to pull off such a feat meant he could likely perform advanced jutsu with a single hand. In battle, this was akin to having an extra hand compared to one's opponent. Especially in a tense standoff, the sudden use of one-handed jutsu could catch an opponent off guard, an unpredictable trump card. Then again, Niji thought Kyoji's absurdly impressive chakra control was so far beyond that perhaps he shouldn't be surprised. Yet, with constant practice, I can just about manage it. Kyoji shrugged casually, showing no pride. In truth, with his precise chakra control, he could even perform this level of healing jutsu without any hand seals. He simply didn't want to appear too abnormal. Incredible. Unbelievable. Both Lee and Niji couldn't help but gaze at Kyoji in admiration. But at that moment, Kyoji's eyebrows furrowed. Sensing something, he turned to look in the direction of Konoha's main gate. He detected a fairly strong chakra signature suddenly appearing there. Clearly, it wasn't an intruder. It was someone walking right through the front gate. That chakra. It feels strangely familiar, yet distant. Kyoji's eyes flashed thoughtfully. Could it be? Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office on the top floor of the Hokage building. Hokage-sama. An Anbu member wearing a cat mask appeared suddenly. Kneeling on one knee before Hiruzen, he reported, "The gate guards just reported that Tsunade-sama has returned." Oh! Hiruzen, puffing on his pipe as he reviewed confidential files, immediately stood up, visibly surprised. "Tsunade, she's come back." "Yes." The Anbu member confirmed. Hiruzen frowned, full of questions. Back during the Third Great Ninja War. Dissatisfied with Konoha's leadership, Tsunade had left the village, taking her disciple, Shizuan, with her. In the years since, she had completely distanced herself from village matters, and even from him, her former mentor. Not even the death of the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, had brought her back. So why now, so suddenly could she have changed her mind and decided to stay in the village? Having such a skilled medic and powerful shinobi would undoubtedly be a boon for the village. At the same time, the return of Tsunade, who once held high status and popularity, also made Hiruzen wary. Long ago, in the wake of the Third Great Ninja War, Konoha was left weakened. To end the drawn-out conflict, they'd refrained from demanding reparations from Iwagakure. To appease dissent, Hiruzen had once resigned, stepping down for Minato, a disciple of Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sunin. But after the Nine Tails incident 8 years ago, the fourth Hokage sacrificed himself. Konoha, devastated and leaderless, fell into chaos. Other shinobi nations began eyeing the village hungrily, the threat of war looming once again. Hiruzen took advantage of the situation, resuming his role as Hokage. Yet power, once tasted, is as addictive as any drug. Even during Minato's tenure, Hiruzen had retained much of the Hokage's authority, resulting in Konoha essentially having 2 Hokages at the time. As a young Hokage, Minato had struggled under these constraints, never able to lead freely. Now, the once respected strongest Hokage, adored by countless in Konoha, was more reluctant than ever to release his hold on power. Over the years, his 3 disciples had all left the village in one way or another. The return of Tsunade both pleased and unnerved the aging Hiruzen, whose grip on power had gradually eroded his former strength and ideals, turning him into a calculated politician. After all, this particular disciple of his was unlike the others. As the granddaughter of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, and personally appointed as Princess of Konoha by the daimyo of the Land of Fire, Tsunade held significant influence in the village. Her impressive record in battle and her exceptional medical skills earned her deep respect among the villagers. Many of Konoha's shinobi, including clan leaders, had benefited from her healing abilities at one point or another. In the right circumstances, she might actually rally a significant following. Hiruzen couldn't help but weigh the implications carefully. Why had she returned now, and what was her intent? Chapter 14, Tsunade's Shock. Currently, at the gate of the Ishikawa residence, Azumi, whose health had been declining in recent days, stood there unsteadily, leaning on a cane. Seeing the visitor before her, her lips trembled with excitement. Her face, wrinkled, sallow, and thin, flushed unnaturally with a hint of red. She struggled to bow to the visitor. "Lady Tsunade. Azumi, you've aged too." Looking at the elderly woman in front of her, whose life seemed near its end, Tsunade's gaze was filled with nostalgia. She stepped forward to support her and said in a low voice, "Enough, the Senju clan is no more. You don't need to be so formal." Tsunade was familiar with Azumi. In her youth, Azumi had been her maid, responsible for looking after her and staying by her side. Moreover, Azumi's mother, Senju Toka, had been a trusted confidant of her grandfather, the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama. She was an elite kunoichi within the Senju clan, renowned for her genjutsu skills, known even among shinobi from other countries. But time had eroded the past. The once glorious Senju clan had vanished. Its powerful members had perished one by one in the harsh wars of previous years. Fortunately, many of them, under the arrangements of the first Hokage, had married civilians or other ninja clans, blending Senju blood into the heart of Konoha. Thus, though Tsunade knew of Konoha's darker side and harbored disdain for its higher UPS, she reluctantly set aside her grievances to return when she received Azumi's letter asking to see her one last time. She had come to say goodbye. "I'm sorry Tsunade-sama, I wouldn't be able to do that, cough, cough. Please, come inside." Yet Azumi, stubborn as always, insisted on completing her greeting. In her heart, although she had taken her husband's surname, she would always consider herself a part of the Senju clan. Looking at Tsunade, whose beauty and figure made her appear no older than 20, Azumi couldn't help but marvel. Lady Tsunade, indeed a master of medical jutsus, had the means to keep her youthful. Though she was in her 40s, she looked like a young woman. Cough, cough, and this is... Azumi's weary eyes turned to the slender young woman behind Tsunade, short-haired and holding a pink piglet. Surprised, she asked about the woman following Tsunade. "She is my disciple, Shizuan," Tsunade replied directly. "Azumi-sama, pleased to meet you." Shizuan, a bit shy, smiled politely, lifting the piglet in her arms. "This is Tauntaun." "Tauntaun." The cute little pig greeted them, playfully squealing. "I see. Lady Tsunade and Shizuan, don't just stand there. Please, come in." As Azumi spoke, Tsunade nodded, not bothering with pleasantries. Supporting Azumi, who was struggling to move, she guided her into the living room. She didn't immediately ask why Azumi had sent for her but instead began a medical examination. Her face quickly turned serious, her brows furrowing deeply. As she examined Azumi, it became clear that Azumi's life was hanging by a thread. The fact that she had survived this long was, in itself, a miracle. It was evident that a skilled medical nin had been using their chakra daily to sustain Azumi's body. Whoever that ninja was, they possessed considerable talent. "Your body." Cough, cough, "Don't worry, Lady Tsunade." Azumi coughed continuously. "I know my own condition. If it weren't for my grandson, Kiyoshi, continuously healing me with his chakra, I would have been in the ground long ago." Cough, cough. Tsunade looked surprised. "Your grandson, son of Masato, that medic nin from the medic corps. She recalled that when she left Konoha, Masato had only just married and had no children. If Azumi's grandson was that young, he could be no more than 10 years old at most. And if she remembered correctly, Masato had sacrificed himself during the Nine Tails attack a few years back. Yes, Kyoji is only 8 years old, but his talent far surpasses his father's. Thinking of her prodigious grandson, pride filled Azumi's heart. That boy, with only Masato's old scrolls and notes, taught himself. He's already mastered the mystical palm jutsu, an A-rank medical jutsu. He's the one who's been caring for me. What? Mastered the mystical palm jutsu at 8 years old. Both Shizuan and Tsunade were stunned. Tsunade's eyes contracted sharply, her expression one of disbelief as she looked at Azumi. The mystical palm jutsu was no ordinary jutsu. Its difficulty was a solid A rank, and medical ninjutsu was far harder to learn than regular jutsu. But mastering the jutsu was only the first step, using it effectively was what truly mattered. After examining Azumi, Tsunade knew precisely how challenging it was to use the mystical palm jutsu for long-term care. Her grandson's skill was nothing short of extraordinary. Cough, cough, it's true. When Kyoji returns, you can test him yourself, Lady Tsunade. Azumi said with a smile. Azumi knew her own body well. Seeing Kyoji's exceptional talent had strengthened her resolve to pave a better future for him before her time was up. So, when she saw him awaken the first Hokage's wood release, she was determined. Half a month ago, when Shikaku came by for a visit, she asked him to send word to Tsunade, the last Senjua princess, hoping she could meet Tsunade one last time. But Tsunade was known for being hard to locate. Even the Nara clan had gone to great lengths to deliver Azumi's letter. You specifically asked the Nara clan to bring me back just for his sake, didn't you? Tsunade realized her intention, a solemn look spreading across her face. She thought she understood Azumi's wish. Azumi likely hoped she would take her grandson as a student. If Kyoji truly possessed such talent, it would be worth considering. In recent years, Tsunade had been disappointed by the realization that, despite her dedicated teaching, Shizuan's potential was limited. Now in her 20s, Shizuan's medical skills were only a bit stronger than Masato's had been back in the day. She could not inherit Tsunade's full legacy. Cough, cough, as an old woman, that is indeed my wish, but there's something even more important to discuss with you. Azumi said, glancing at Shizuan and hesitating. Lady Tsunade, Azumi-sama, I'll take Taunton for a little walk so you can talk. Sensing the moment, Shizuan smiled, bowing out with the pig in her arms. It's fine. Tsunade waved her hand, speaking frankly. Shizuan is my disciple, loyal and discreet. You can speak freely. Well, all right. Azumi hesitated, but seeing Tsunade's assurance, she took a deep breath, as if gathering her resolve. Kyoji has awakened Lord Hashirama's wood release. What? Tsunade's eyes widened in shock, and she immediately stood up, unable to contain herself. Chapter 15, Unusual Chakra. Wood release. It wasn't only Tsunade who was left stunned. Shizuan, who had been quietly observing, was equally shocked, her mouth hanging open in disbelief, and even the small pig she held slipped right from her grasp onto the floor. Both women stared in astonishment at Azumi, the elder before them. Over the years, nobody from the Senjua clan, apart from Hashirama Senju himself, had ever awakened the power of wood release. Not even Hashirama's direct descendants had managed to awaken this bloodline limit, Tsunade herself, the granddaughter of the first Hokage, being no exception. To resurrect this once peace-bringing power, Konoha had even resorted to harsh human experimentation. Numerous capable ninjas with senju blood were selected by high-ranking officials, led by Hiruzen and Danzo, to undergo trials. They even transplanted cells from the first Hokage in a desperate attempt to obtain the wood release ability. Yet, without exception, every subject fell victim to the overwhelming power of the first Hokage's cells, succumbing to a gruesome fate. No one ever succeeded in acquiring wood release. Eventually, due to high casualties and the inhumanity of the experiments, the project was abandoned by the top brass. Are you telling the truth? Tsunade's face grew solemn as she looked straight into Azumi's eyes. Absolutely. Tsunade-sama, as old and frail as I may be, I wouldn't lie about something this serious, Azumi said firmly. No wonder that when I examined you, I detected traces of an unusual chakra, laced with a remarkable, life-giving essence. This kind of deception would be easy to uncover, and even if Azumi wanted Tsunade to take on her grandson as a disciple, she wouldn't need to fabricate a lie. Tsunade, who knew Azumi's character, nodded in realization. It indeed seemed miraculous that Azumi, with her frail body, had even managed to survive this long. For a moment, this famed Sunin, the medical legend, found herself increasingly intrigued by Azumi's grandson, Kiyoshi. Incredible! Shizuan, standing beside her, was similarly shocked. She had left Konoha with Tsunade as a young girl, journeying across the shinobi world under her guidance, and fully understood the significance of wood release. At that moment, footsteps echoed from the hallway outside. Sensing the arrival of guests with his powerful perception, Kiyoshi unlocked the door and entered the house. "Grandma, I'm back." Tsunade and Shizuan instinctively turned their heads toward him. As the door opened, Shizuan couldn't help but stare in awe at the young boy. What a beautiful child! Even Tsunade, sizing him up, was slightly taken aback. "So, this was Kiyoshi, you're back." Azumi waved, beckoning him over. "We have guests, come say hello." "Though you never mentioned it, Grandma, I had a feeling." Kiyoshi's gaze fell on the group, his eyes lingered briefly on Tsunade, a stunning woman draped in a long green cloak, with a dignified appearance and a striking physique, and then on Shizuan, a young woman with short hair, somewhat rustic in dress, holding a small pink pig. "You must be Lady Tsunade, one of the legendary Sunin." Kiyoshi spoke with a polite smile even before Azumi could introduce them. "I sensed the immense chakra presence when I was still in the academy. No other woman in Konoha wields such power, only you." As he spoke, his gaze momentarily drifted to the crystal necklace around her neck, its shimmer weighty and dazzling. Indeed, it was said this necklace alone could buy 3 mountains containing gold mines if it was ever sold, and that it was a crystal gem from the first Hokage himself, emanating an intense energy that he could feel resonating within. Impressive! Tsunade couldn't help but be amazed. Was this boy really capable of such keen chakra perception, enough to identify her by it alone? Such perception reminded her of her great-uncle. And he was only 8 years old. However, noticing Kiyoshi's gaze, Tsunade narrowed her eyes and smiled. Have you had your fill of looking?" "Ahem, the necklace on your neck is rather unique," Kiyoshi said, withdrawing his gaze. "It seems to contain quite an astonishing amount of chakra." "Tsunade, is that necklace all you're looking at?" That sly glance hadn't escaped her. "Humph, little pervert. Amazing." Shizuan was equally taken aback. She hadn't expected Kiyoshi to recognize the significance of Tsunade's necklace, which was rarely seen without her and held an incredible legacy. She couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Tsunade-sama's necklace is said to be a chakra crystal of Lord Hashirama, the first Hokage. It's rumored that selling it could buy several mountains containing gold mines. Pausing, she looked at Kiyoshi, who stood calmly, and then she asked, Azumi-san told us you have indeed awakened the wood release that only Lord Hashirama possessed. Kiyoshi, she is Tsunade-sama's student, Azumi interjected, coughing slightly and patting Kiyoshi on the shoulder. No need to hold back, you can trust them. Azumi was fully aware of her condition. Despite Kiyoshi's efforts to care for her, the end was inevitable. Medicine had reached its limit. She couldn't bear the thought of leaving her precious grandson, whom she'd raised alone, without any family. Nor could she bear to let his incredible talents go unfulfilled. I see. Kiyoshi nodded, glancing at his ailing grandmother. He sighed inwardly, knowing that Tsunade's presence in Konoha was likely at Azumi's request. Her health was beyond saving. But he hadn't expected that his grandmother intended to find him someone he could rely on before her passing. In truth, remaining in Konoha had little appeal to him. The constraints and limitations were overwhelming. Even his daily training felt restricted. If it weren't for his concern for Azumi, he might have already left. Who cared if they branded him a rogue ninja traveling the shinobi world under Tsunade's guidance? Now that was a promising option. Is that so? His mind was already made up, so Kiyoshi didn't hesitate. He didn't want to disappoint his grandmother's expectations. Of course, it had nothing to do with his fascination with Tsunade's legendary, weighty crystal necklace. Swish! Raising his right arm, he transformed it into a verdant branch, sprouting countless green leaves in a matter of seconds. Blooms of vibrant colors emerged from his arm, their sweet fragrance filling the air. This is... The miraculous sight left Shizun speechless, her eyes wide in amazement. Even Tsunade, who had been standing with her arms crossed, observing Kiyoshi, couldn't help but widen her own eyes in shock. Chapter 16, Grandma's Wish. It's really wood release. In the living room, Shizun was stunned. Her mouth had dropped open, forming a perfect O, and she couldn't close it. Even Tsunade herself was silent, struggling to calm down after what she had witnessed. It had been so many years, and she never expected to see her grandfather's wood release again, the wood release jutsu that the first Hokage had used to bring peace to the warring clans. I never imagined you would awaken such a power. Tsunade took a deep breath, fighting to steady the turmoil in her heart. She looked intently at Kiyoshi, the young boy before her. Her gaze softened, and for a moment, she could almost see shadows of her grandfather, the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama, and her granduncle, the second Hokage, Senju Tobirama, in him. Ahem, Lady Tsunade. Azumi, Kiyoshi's grandmother, was also lost in memories. She looked over at Tsunade, her eyes filled with hope. No need to say more, Azumi. I accept. Tsunade nodded. A gentle smile appeared on her face as she looked straight at Kiyoshi. You're no ordinary kid, so I won't beat around the bush. Kiyoshi, would you like to become my student? An 8-year-old with such incredible talent, carrying the blood of the Senju clan and the rare ability to use wood release, a power unseen since her grandfather, the first Hokage. There was an innate closeness Tsunade felt with him. A disciple like him, practically presenting himself to her, was something she wouldn't refuse. So, with none of the pomp of a legendary Sunin, she asked him directly. Of course, it would be my honor. Kiyoshi nodded. His right arm, which had been injured, visibly healed right before everyone's eyes. It was as if the impressive scene just now had never happened at all. There was no reason for him to turn down this offer. As a descendant of the Senju, the granddaughter of the first Hokage, and one of the three Sunin, Tsunade was a master of medical ninjutsu and likely possessed many invaluable resources. She had likely even seen scrolls containing high-level or forbidden jutsu. By following her, he would not only have the chance to leave Konoha and explore the shinobi world but also be in the company of a stunning woman. Plus, this was his grandmother Azumi's final wish. He didn't want her to pass away with any regrets. Kyoshi-kun, I'm Shizuan, Lady Tsunade's student. Shizuan said, holding Taunton in her arms, happily approaching Kyoshi. From today onwards, we'll both learn together, hee. This is Taunton, and just so you know, Taunton is not an emergency food. Oink! Oink! Seeing how serious Shizuan was, as if she was genuinely afraid Kyoshi might get hungry and roast Taunton for dinner, Kyoshi couldn't help but smile a little. Don't worry, I won't do that, Shizuan-senpai. He then turned to Tsunade, bowing politely, then, Tsunade-sensei, I look forward to your guidance from now on. Sensei doesn't sound quite right. Seeing that Kyoshi had accepted her as his master so readily, Tsunade, noticing his maturity without a hint of arrogance, was genuinely pleased. She walked over and pinched his cheek. Just call me Nei-chan big sister from now on. The chakra of the Senju clan within him made her feel naturally close to him. Ahem, Lady Tsunade. Azumi started to protest, but Kyoshi immediately jumped at the opportunity, not waiting for her to finish. Tsunade-ni-chan. Now that's better. Tsunade's face lit up with a broad smile, clearly delighted. No woman likes being addressed in a way that sounds old. Moreover, this new disciple of hers, while mature for his age, wasn't stiff and overly formal. Tsunade liked it that way. She wasn't fond of the type who acted overly serious and never relaxed. Shizuan was a bit like that, too stiff and uptight, never willing to join her for a drink or a bet. One disciple like Shizuan was enough. Kyoshi, you can't be so casual with Lady Tsunade. Azumi sighed, patting her grandson on the head. Seeing that Tsunade was determined, though, she decided not to press the issue. All right, Lady Tsunade, on this occasion, I'll have Kyoshi prepare for a celebration. All those things aren't necessary. No need to make it so troublesome. Tsunade waved it off, unbothered. Azumi, don't be so rigid, your grandson is a lot more fun than you are. She never cared much for formality or tradition. If Kyoshi respected her, he didn't need to prove it with some ceremony or celebration. And if he didn't respect her, no amount of ceremony would make a difference. However, she couldn't turn down Azumi's insistence. With the elderly woman's encouragement, Kyoshi finally prepared a formal tea ceremony, bowing respectfully as he offered a cup to his beautiful new teacher, Tsunade. It marked the moment he officially became the disciple of Tsunade, one of the three legendary Sunin. Chapter 17, Promising Future. A single-handed seal. In the living room of the Ishikawa house. Shizuan's eyes widened in shock. Beside her, Tsunade was also visibly astonished, watching as Kyoshi demonstrated the mystical palm jutsu. This A-rank medical ninjutsu was no simple feat compared to lower-level jutsus, yet he was capable of forming its seals with a single hand. And at his age it was truly astounding. Wow, this kid is really something. Tsunade extended her right hand, casually letting it be enveloped by the gentle green glow emanating from Kyoshi's hand. She could feel firsthand the mastery he had over the mystical palm jutsu, perfected to an incredible degree. Her expression quickly shifted. Though Kiyoshi's application of the jutsu lacked the polish of her own expertise, his meticulous chakra control made it clear he only lacked clinical experience. What truly amazed her was that his mystical palm jutsu seemed to carry an overwhelming vitality. "Kiyoshi, your chakra is quite unique," Tsunade remarked. "No wonder Azumi has held on this long. His chakra." It felt almost as if her grandfather, the first Hokage, had been reincarnated. The life force in his chakra was so powerful that it amplified the healing effects several-fold. It must be due to wood release, she thought. "Yes, but this is my limit." Kiyoshi sighed lightly, a hint of helplessness in his voice. The elderly woman's body was already at its limit, nearing the end of her life. Just after Kiyoshi had been accepted as Tsunade's student, she had wanted to personally welcome her and have a meaningful talk. Yet, her body couldn't keep up. After helping her back to her room, she quickly fell asleep. At this rate, she might not last a few more days. "Don't overthink it, you've already done more than enough," Tsunade said, patting Kiyoshi on the head to comfort him. "Honestly, even I couldn't have prolonged her life this much." She looked intently at this prodigious young disciple she'd only just taken under her wing, yet who had already amazed her greatly. Then, with a solemn expression, she said, "If I'm not mistaken, even when you're injured, you don't need to form seals to heal yourself, right?" "What, no seals, to heal his own wounds?" Shizuan was utterly stunned, struggling to believe her ears. She stared at Kiyoshi, then looked back at Tsunade. "Lady Tsunade, that can't be possible, can it?" "Oink! Oink!" The small pink pig beside her also let out a series of squeals. "Yes, that's correct," Kiyoshi replied with a smile. "For ordinary injuries, they heal almost instantly on their own." As he spoke, he suppressed the powers of his wood fruit. Picking up a fruit knife from the nearby table, he said, "Like this." Tsunade instinctively looked away. Her fear of blood made her avoid the sight of blood, or else she'd be unable to stop trembling. Kiyoshi calmly cut his arm with the knife. A small stream of blood began to flow. Under Shizuan's stunned gaze, the deep cut, which would normally take days or even weeks to heal without medical ninjutsu, began to close up at a visible speed. Within moments, the wound had vanished entirely, leaving not even the faintest scar. Incredible, the wound really disappeared. Shizuan stepped forward, dabbing away the blood and checking Kiyoshi's skin again and again, confirming there was no scar. Amazed, she stared blankly at the young man before her. What kind of prodigy was this? Quickly, she turned to Tsunade, who had purposefully turned away to avoid the sight of blood. "Lady Tsunade, it's okay now." "As expected." Tsunade turned back, crossing her arms and nodding, not particularly surprised. Her grandfather, Hashirama, had also possessed the ability to heal his wounds instantly without forming seals. When she felt the incredible life force within Kiyoshi's chakra, she had suspected he might be able to achieve something similar. But what she didn't know was that Hashirama's no-seal healing didn't stem from his wood release. Instead, it was due to his status as the reincarnation of Azura, the second son of the Sage of the Six Paths, inheriting the sage's body and the immense power of yang release. Kiyoshi, however, was different. Even without the powers of the wood fruit, he possessed a Senjua bloodline and had a high likelihood of awakening wood release in the future. Yet he lacked the powerful yang release of Azura's chakra and couldn't reach the same heights as the first Hokage. It was similar to his distant cousin, Mogi. She, too, would awaken wood release in the future, but her strength would be weak in comparison, even inferior to Yamato from the Anbu, the sole survivor of Orochimaru's experiments with first Hokage cells. Currently, Kyoshi's ability to heal without seals was thanks to the power of the wood fruit, which had triggered the potential for wood release within him. With his naturally vast Senju chakra, the rare wood release Kekkei Genkai, and the powers of the wood fruit, these three forces merged perfectly, causing a unique mutation. This had granted him a flawless yang release. And as his strength grew, this extraordinary power would only continue to get stronger. Chapter 18, Building Trust. Alright, you don't need to see us off. Time passed. Tsunade and Shizuan were completely captivated by Kyoshi, left speechless by his incredible talents. They declined Kyoshi's invitation and made their way downstairs. Tsunade was in an exceptionally good mood. She had initially wanted to take her newly accepted disciple out for barbecue. However, since Kyoshi had already made plans with Kurane in the morning, who would be bringing groceries over to cook, he had to graciously decline the offer from his teacher. Shizuan and I will be staying in Konoha for a while, Tsunade said with a bright smile, gently patting Kyoshi's head. She handed him 2 scrolls, smiling as she said, "These contain my insights on basic medical ninjutsu, along with some related cases and methods to address them. Take some time to study them. If you have any questions, feel free to come find me. In a couple of days, I'll take you to the Konoha hospital for some practical experience." Having taken on such a talented disciple, Tsunade felt she would finally have something to brag about when encountering Jiraiya again. After all, he had once boasted about training Minato, often showing off in front of her and Orochimaru. The way he boasted about it made her feel irritated at times, wishing to punch him. But alas, that was a thing of the past. Tsunade had initially been reluctant to stay in Konoha. But she understood how dire Azumi's condition was. She was hanging on, relying on Kyoshi's powerful chakra to keep her alive, waiting for her return to make arrangements for her grandson. Now that her wish had been fulfilled, she felt reassured. It was likely that she would only have a few days left. Kyoshi had to accompany the elderly lady through her final days, and also handle her affairs, leaving no worries behind. After that, she could take him away from Konoha. "Thank you, Tsunade-nichan." Kyoshi was delighted. He took the scrolls and nodded. He was not disappointed that these 2 scrolls did not contain any advanced ninjutsu or other medical jutsus. He wasn't that superficial, nor was he impatient. A tall tree grows from a sapling. His medical ninjutsu skills had all been developed through his own exploration. He had memorized the related insights left by his late parents until he was proficient. Apart from treating small animals and occasionally tending to injuries for Lee or other classmates, he mainly used his unique chakra to nourish and care for his grandmother. Especially since he had to keep a low profile, he lacked extensive clinical experience. He needed opportunities for practical application. Now that he had become the disciple of Tsunade, he had such a powerful background. As long as he did not reveal his wood release, even if his talent attracted the attention of the higher UPS, he would not fear it. Seeing Kyoshi's reaction, Tsunade noticed that he showed no signs of disappointment. Instead, he looked genuinely pleased. This made Tsunade even more satisfied. Such temperament was rare. He was not like other peers who were impetuous. After becoming a disciple of a famous teacher, they would aim too high. They would always want to learn some advanced ninjutsu or powerful forbidden jutsus right away, fantasizing about achieving great heights in one leap. But they didn't realize that the fundamentals were the most important. Especially since medical ninjutsu differed from other mainstream ninjutsu. It required not only time and effort to study diligently but also a substantial amount of clinical practice to apply what was learned, slowly accumulating experience. The precious experiences and insights accumulated over time by predecessors could significantly shorten this process. This allowed future medical practitioners to progress quickly. Of course, with Kyoji's astonishing talent, he would not be limited to being just a medical ninja in the future. But she believed that possessing this foundation would definitely help him go further. His outstanding abilities would allow him to balance learning both medical ninjutsu and other ninjutsu, achieving comprehensive development. Kyoshi, let's get going. Shizuan smiled, waving as she held onto Taunton, looking at Kyoshi. She felt no pressure from suddenly having such a talented teammate, instead, she felt genuinely happy. Shizuan knew her abilities were limited and that she couldn't perfectly inherit Tsunade's legacy. Kyoshi's emergence relieved her of a concern. She was also looking forward to how far he could go in the future. She had just witnessed how incredibly talented he was. Who knows, he might even become a great ninja like the first Hokage. By the way, if you don't want to go to Ninja Academy anymore, you can just skip it. As she led Shizuan away, Tsunade waved her hand without looking back. Remember to find time to handle your leave of absence at Ninja Academy. Just put my name down, there's really nothing left for you to learn there. I understand. Kyoshi nodded. He knew he wouldn't be at Ninja Academy for long. Whether he went or not didn't matter anymore. It was just right. He needed to spend some time crafting a battle-ready puppet for Tenten. Moreover, it wasn't just Tsunade who had noticed Azumi's condition. Kyoshi, who frequently treated and cared for his grandmother, was very much aware. He wanted to accompany this elderly woman who genuinely cared for him through her final moments, so that she could leave without any regrets. At the same time, Kyoshi understood how much Tsunade currently disliked staying in Konoha. A warm feeling rose in his heart. He developed a fondness for her. Well then, Tsunade-nichan, Shizuan-senpai, I'm in your care. Watching Tsunade and Shizuan figures fade into the distance down the street, Kyoshi smiled as he toyed with the scrolls in his hands. Having an additional beautiful sister and a teacher would surely make for an interesting future. Chapter 19, Kurene's Care. Kyoshi. At this moment, a crisp voice came from afar. The familiar voice immediately made Kyoshi aware of the person's identity. Turning around to look at the newcomer, his eyes lit up. He smiled and said, Kurene-nichan. The newcomer had long, glossy black curls and a beautifully delicate face, with ruby-like eyes that sparkled. Her graceful figure was charming, and she approached Kyoshi with a bright smile. It was none other than his neighbor Kurene. Sorry, I'm a bit late today. Kurene was carrying some groceries, resembling the ideal wife. It's not late at all. I was just about to look for you. Kyoshi replied with a smile. Lunch today was just the two of them, so a little delay didn't matter. Lately, his grandmother's health had been declining. She hadn't had much of an appetite these days and could barely eat. Having 2 meals in a day was already good, as she mostly didn't want to eat at noon. Even for breakfast and dinner, she would only take a few bites before being unable to eat any more. She couldn't force her, after all. Kurene-nichan, has Asuma been bothering you again? Kyoshi swiftly took the groceries from Kurene's hands and asked, if he doesn't give up, I'll help you teach him a lesson. Little brat, don't meddle in adult affairs. Kurene lightly tapped Kyoshi on the head. Looking at his face that could charm countless girls, she couldn't help but pinch his cheek. With a teasing smile, she said, last time Asuma treated us, you ate like a bottomless pit. He hasn't dared to invite me to dinner again since then. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, Kurane wouldn't have believed it. Kyoshi's appetite was even more exaggerated than that of the Akimichi clan. Asuma Sarutobi, a renowned jonin, had his hard-earned mission rewards wiped out in one meal. Asuma's face had changed at that moment. Not only because the expenses exceeded his expectations, but also because he hadn't brought that much money with him. Seeing his awkward expression almost made her and Kyoshi burst out laughing. They had to hold back their laughter and pool their money together to help settle the bill. Because of this incident, perhaps Asuma felt a bit embarrassed. Or maybe he realized there was no future between him and Kurane. He seemed to have genuinely given up on pursuing her. He rarely appeared in front of her anymore. Even when they occasionally bumped into each other on the street, he would just awkwardly nod and quickly walk away. But that was fine, at least she could have some peace. After all, they were once classmates at the Ninja Academy. And besides, Asuma was not only a jonin of Konoha but also the son of the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. She couldn't be too harsh, it wouldn't be right to be cold towards him. Hey, who told him to act all generous? Kyoshi wasn't boasting. If he really wanted to eat to his heart's content, with the absurd digestion ability of the wood fruit, the Akimichi clan's appetite would be child's play in comparison. If food could be supplied endlessly, he could eat Asuma into bankruptcy. Pfft! Upon hearing this, Kurane couldn't help but chuckle, her eyes filled with fondness as she looked at Kyoshi, whom she had come to treat like a younger brother. With her manicured fingers, she gently poked Kyoshi's forehead, saying, "You're full of tricks." "All right, enough of that." Kurane laughed as she pinched Kyoshi's face. She brushed aside a stray lock of hair and asked with concern, "How's Granny Azumi doing today?" "Not so well, she's already gone to bed. She said there's no need to call her for lunch." Kyoshi shrugged helplessly. "What?" In the kitchen, Kurane was about to shoo Kyoshi away to help. But after a moment, she was startled by Kyoshi's news. Turning around, she looked at him in disbelief. "You became Lady Tsunade's disciple, you're not joking with me, are you?" "Yet. Grandma used to be from the Senju clan, and she's an old friend of Lady Tsunade. She sent someone to call her back, and when Tsunade saw my talent, she agreed to take me as her disciple." Kyoshi nodded and explained casually. Granny Azumi was from the Senju clan. Kurane's eyes widened in shock. For a moment, she found it hard to believe. "I just found out recently." Kyoshi nodded. He moved a stool over and sat outside the kitchen, admiring Kurane, who looked charming in her apron, exuding both beauty and grace. She was the epitome of a virtuous wife and loving mother. "That's fantastic." Kurane took a deep breath. Seeing Kyoshi didn't look like he was joking, she naturally chose to believe him without too much doubt. She smiled and genuinely felt happy for Kyoshi. "Kyoshi, your talent is extraordinary, and having a renowned teacher like Lady Tsunade will surely lead to limitless achievements in your future." Having known him for so many years, she was well aware of how impressive his talents were. At not even 8 years old, he had already mastered the Shadow Clone Jutsu, a B-rank ninjutsu, and could effortlessly perform high-level A-rank jutsus like the Raise Nan. He could even make hand seals with one hand. Though he was still just a kid, his chakra amount was more exaggerated than hers, who was an elite chunin at least several times more. So far, she had never seen Kyoshi run out of chakra while practicing medical ninjutsu. If Kyoshi hadn't mentioned that he didn't want to draw too much attention and asked her to keep it a secret, during gatherings with Might Guy, Kakashi, Asuma, and others, Kurane would have surely bragged about him. Chapter 20, Joyful Flattery. Ehehe, Kuranai-chan, your cooking really hits the spot. It was a simple homemade meal, shared just between Kyoji and Kuranai. Yet, Kyoji savored every bite, clearly enjoying the moment. His eyes sparkled with genuine delight as he ate, making Kuranai smile. You little flatterer! You always say that, making me blush every time. Kuranai replied with a grin, though the satisfaction on her face was unmistakable. Watching Kyoji eat with such enthusiasm, she couldn't help but feel a hearty appetite herself. Typically conscious about her figure, she found herself indulging a bit more than usual. Kuranai-chan, Asuma's been chasing after you for a long time. Have you really not felt anything for him? Kyoji asked as he helped wash the dishes after lunch. Truthfully, he was more than a little curious and leaned in closely to hear her answer. Asuma's a good person, and he's strong too, Kuranai sighed, cleaning up. But I just don't feel that way about him. I only see him as a friend, and I'm really not into men who smoke. There was no denying Asuma's strength and impressive lineage as a member of the Sarutobi clan and the son of the third Hokage. However, Kuranai wasn't the kind of woman who dreamed of marrying into a prominent family. As an elite chunin herself, she aimed to accumulate enough experience to potentially reach Jonin in the coming years. She didn't need to compromise her happiness. When it comes to love, it's all about the right feeling, isn't it? And there was one other thing she didn't mention. If she had to admit it, she was more attracted to younger guys, someone she could spoil. But confessing that too embarrassing for her to even think about. So, Kuranai-chan, how about me? Kyoji asked with a grin, drying his hands after finishing the dishes. Kyoji looked up at her, his gaze rising to meet hers, crossing the peaks of her chest. His expression was serious. Do I meet your standards? Kuranai wasn't angry, instead, she looked down at his youthful face, pinching his nose playfully. Well, I have to admit, you're a little heartbreaker. Totally my type. She wasn't lying. Even her friend Anko, usually so brash and always teasing, had calmed down a bit after meeting Kyoji. Anko had been eyeing him for quite some time. Well then, Nichan, why don't you just marry me someday? Kyoji asked with an innocent smile. Alright. If you still want to when you're grown up, and you don't mind having an old lady like me, I'll marry you. Kuranai responded with a laugh, brushing it off as the naive dream of a child. You won't ever be an old lady. Kyoji chuckled, clearly pleased. Didn't you notice Tsunade-sama is already over 50, but she still looks like she's 18. That's all thanks to the Yin Seal, a high-level medical sealing jutsu Tsunade developed over the years. Once mastered, it leaves a diamond-shaped mark on the forehead, allowing the user to regulate their chakra, instantly heal injuries, strengthen attacks, and boost speed. The jutsu could even slow aging and maintain peak physical condition. And, of course, as Kyoji knew from his memory of the original anime, Tsunade would remain youthful for decades to come, well into her 70s, using this S-rank seal. Kyoji had long set his sights on Tsunade's Yin seal. After all, who wouldn't want the key to eternal youth? What's that? Not enough talent or chakra control to master the Yin seal to him, that's no issue at all. Oh really? Kuranai looked at him with genuine surprise. She had met Lady Tsunade in the past, though they hadn't crossed paths since Tsunade left the village. Considering her age, Tsunade must be in her late 40s or early 50s now. But Kyoji wouldn't lie about something like this. Impressive, Lady Tsunade. That kind of skill to stay forever young is something to admire, Kuranai said with a wistful smile, gently pinching Kyoji's cheek. As a medical ninja, it's no wonder she's aged so gracefully. After all, what woman wouldn't want to stay young and beautiful forever? Don't worry. Now that I'm training under Tsunade, I'll learn all her beauty secrets and teach them to you. Kyoji promised, smiling. In reality, even if Kurane learned the complete Yin Seal Jutsu, she might not be able to master it. Still, Kyoji had a bold idea. If the fourth Hokage could use the four-symbol seal to restrain the nine-tails chakra within his son Naruto, creating the 8-trigram seal in the process, what if he could similarly seal the Yin seal in someone else? Could this allow others to experience the Yin seal's effects indirectly? Though complicated, he had all the time he needed to figure it out. Then, Nichin will be counting on you. Kurane chuckled, not taking him too seriously. Of course. Kyoji released his hold and stepped back, eyeing her with a mischievous glint. I've even picked out a name for our future daughter. Kurane blinked, momentarily speechless. Kids these days sure mature quickly. Getting ahead of yourself, aren't you? Think about all that when you're older, she chided, tapping his forehead with a laugh. But why was he thinking of a daughter instead of a son? Are you going on a mission this afternoon? Nichin Kyoji asked. No, I finally have some free time after working all morning. Kurane replied, stretching her arms in a graceful arch, her body relaxing as she yawned. I need a good nap. Lack of sleep is the biggest enemy of any woman. For a moment, her curves were displayed in stunning detail. Yet, Kyoji was the only one lucky enough to witness this scene. Ahihi. Kyoji swiftly jumped onto her soft back, wrapping his arms around her neck and nuzzling close. It's been so long since I could just hang out with you, Nichin. Looking over her shoulder at his hopeful, charming little face, Kurane felt her heart melt. She lightly pinched his cheek and replied dotingly, all right, today I'll grant you this little wish, but you have to behave. Since he was little, Kyoji had always tried to sneak into her bed whenever he got the chance, treating her as his personal pillow. But his sweet, earnest gaze was impossible to refuse. Of course. I'll be good. Kyoji's face lit up as he nodded enthusiastically. In a world so cold and distant, Kurane's embrace felt warm enough to bring him comfort. Thanks for watching.